It's an evolution. I'm still learning. That's why I love food. You learn so much about yourself through connecting with food. I feel very privileged that I have a profession that allows me to do that.
My name is Nadia, and I'm a Brooklyn-based artist, filmmaker, and the host of Sahtain. I use art, food, and healing spaces to redefine what it means to nourish ourselves. As a Palestinian American living in diaspora, I connect to my roots through our cuisine. There are many others like me who grew up far from our ancestral lands. You could call us third culture kids. The scents, tastes, and unique memories made in the kitchen ground us and connect us to each other. Come with me on a journey of remembrance as we explore third culture kitchens and the plant allies that bring us home. Sumac comes from a berry which grows abundantly from Iran all the way down to the Fertile Crescent. It's crushed into a spice which has a unique, tangy, citrusy kind of flavor. It is iconically used in the Palestinian Musakkhan. Reem Assil is a Palestinian-Syrian chef and owner of Reem's California. In our conversation, we spoke about how we can celebrate diasporic cooking and the ways that we bring our traditions to the land that we live on.
My Arab identity is strengthened by the multicultural situation I find myself in California. And that's something to be celebrated too. And learning from other people in their cuisine. I think that Reem's is really sort of emblematic of that. Our cuisine is as much Oakland as it is Arab or Palestinian or Syrian or anything, I represent so many influences that are a culmination of my life. I was born in a little town called Waltham, 20 minutes outside of Boston. I always kind of joke that I'm a Californian trapped in an East Coaster's body. My mom is Palestinian by way of Lebanon, so she grew up in Beirut from the age of 8. And my dad is actually from Syria. I think I get my community organizing roots from him. My mom always jokes that when they first moved to Boston, he pulled up the white pages back when they existed and looked up anybody with the name Muhammad, called them up. So he made friends very quickly. I was the oldest of 3 girls. It was a hodgepodge of very strong Arab culture and a little touch of Americana. My mom would figure out ways to get sort of Arab spices into American dishes. I landed in Northern California kind of by chance, but I always feel like it was fate. After high school, I was one of those bright-eyed, I'm gonna change the world. 9/11 happened in the second week I was in school. The accumulation of growing up Arab and not understanding the ramifications of that all sort of came at me 1 year of being in school. I think I got really overwhelmed. There was a lot of pressures on me and I got sick. I dropped out and I was I just need to get as far away from Boston as I can. I happen to have an uncle and aunt who lived in San Francisco, and I knew they were activists. So they had my makeup. I came from that cloth. I got into anti-war activism out here. My whole world had opened up. I felt my power and I learned how to eat again in the context of California. First time I discovered a farmer's market was in California. And so I healed both on an emotional and a physical level.
I love how you connect that, that learning to eat again and also learning to eat with the land, it sounds which is a really big part of our culture, right? We have such ties to land, right? And ties to earth. I feel much more connected to my heritage when I get to go, as you say, to a farmer's market and to really know where my food comes from and have that story be part of it.
Certainly going back to the homeland and seeing sort of the origins of a lot of these things. But I was kind of an outsider, but to actually feel connected to land and have memories in the land and understand exactly where the food comes from, there's something really magical about it. And I went to Syria and Lebanon in 2010. I got to kind of travel up the coast of Syria. It felt as if I was in Highway 1 in California. Like it felt so familiar. And then I started to really think about it. I was like, the vegetation in Swana and around the Mediterranean is very similar to, like, it's no wonder that my family moved to California. You know, Arabs eat seasonally. The cuisine is very sophisticated like that. And so to be able to do that here in California is a real privilege. One memory I have of this, maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, I got to witness the olive harvest in Lodi. It was like farmland in Northern California. That is like a rite of passage for Palestinians and for all of us who've been disconnected from our lands. We may never get to see that. I understand what the fight for land is. It's like the fight for our existence as a people, and our food is like so integral to that. So it's really fascinating to me how people in diaspora sort of make home away from home in the lands that they're in.
I love the way you say that, because when we physically can't go back to that land, we can bring that spirit and that intention that we have with the land wherever we go. And we have to, like, we have to cultivate that. Like, that's not something we can take for granted, right? Like San Francisco particularly, the one time I went there, I felt like the rolling hills and the way the buildings were and like the freshness of the food. And just, there was something, I was like, I feel like I'm in Amman or something that makes me feel like I'm in Amman. Yeah, very much. And it's just cool to hear you like feel that way about where you are now. I love that.
It's like there are ingredients that are available to us that maybe in their place of origin are no longer available, you know? And so it's like almost a duty to keep those dishes alive. Like a lot of the fish dishes that sort of got carried down on my Palestinian side of my family in the Gaza cannot cook those dishes. So I try to really honor my own ancestors in the way that they would have cultivated the land, but also the ancestors and the indigenous folks who live in this country, and to remember sort of the origins of this land. Sumac it's this amazing, it's like vibrant red, purple berry that they dry into a spice. And it also sort of makes the backdrop of the trifecta of flavors in za'atar. I grew up having it in my pantry, and I think Musakkhan is the iconic dish that really shows how it can shine in and of itself, you know, because there's not much else going on in that dish except for onions and chicken and olive. It's really the sumac that brings everything to life in that dish. And like for us, it was like comfort food. Like it was like our grub food. Like when my mom wanted to make it, she would like wrap it in tortillas and like slather it with oil and bake it in a casserole, and we would just like grab at it. You have grease dripping down your forearms when you're eating it. It's always messy.
Our family caterer, and also I learned to make this from her, and I make it this way too, is like same. I either buy like tortilla, or I'll buy like somehow find shrock somewhere near here, or like village bread, and I'll wrap it in that. And like that's how she always used to make it. And I just like I just love that. I love that version, that like finger food party version of it. It's so good.
Yeah, so much easier. We have it as the pali cali at Reem's.
Ahlan wa sahlan bikum. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we are here with our very special hero ingredient, Sumac. Sumac is such an iconic staple within our region. Sumac actually comes from a crushed berry, and so it has this very citrusy flavor, as me and Reem discussed. It's typically used in salads, it's always used in fattoush, and the most iconic Palestinian dish that we all know and love is Musakkhan, which uses sumac to flavor these beautiful caramelized onions and roasted chicken, all on top of flatbread. If you know it, you love it. I thought that today we would instead make it vegetarian and use chickpeas. So we will be doing a vegetarian take on Musakkhan using a mixture of smashed and cooked chickpeas and roasted crispy chickpeas. First thing we want to do, which will take the most amount of time, is caramelizing our onions. So we have a lot of onions here. We have about 5 or 6 medium-sized onions. You really want a lot because when you caramelize them, they're going to reduce in size greatly. And so the first thing we want to do is get those on the stove with a good bit of olive oil and salt and just start cooking them down so they can get caramelized. I have my flame on a medium heat, and I'm just going to pour maybe 1/3 to 1/2 cup of olive oil in here. And they will cook down entirely, so trust that. A few good pinches of salt, which will help draw out the moisture from the onions, as well as
enhance their flavor. And then just stir it up, keep it on a medium to low heat, don't let them burn. And we're gonna let them do their thing. This can take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. It depends on how many onions you have. But if you make Musakkhan regularly, this is all the same. We're just going to cook these down slowly until they become nice and golden and very sweet. While these onions are cooking, let's get our spice mix ready for our chickpeas and the cooking that they need to do. For this vegetarian version of Musakkhan, we're going to be using chickpeas, but we're not going to just cook them in one way. We're going to cook them in two ways. So I have 4 cans of chickpeas, 2 in this bowl, 2 in this bowl. And half of them we're going to bake on a sheet till they get really crispy, and the other half we're going to cook in a pan and then mush down a little bit, mix them together so that they have a new, more complex texture. It's going to be beautiful. So first thing I want to do is get my spice mix ready, which is going to go on all the chickpeas. This is all going to be mixed together and put as a topping as a replacement for what our protein or chicken would be. So I have a pestle and mortar. You can use any kind of spice grinder that you like. If you have whole spices, use those and grind them up. If you have already ground spices, you can use those. However, I always encourage you to use whole spices if you have access to them. First thing I'm going to put in is 1 pot of cardamom, just 1, because cardamom is very strong, but it does have a really nice, special little luxurious depth to this. A couple of teaspoons of cumin. I love cumin so much. It just adds such warmth to anything we put it in. It just makes it feel like home to me. That's what cumin really just sends it home for me. So we have a few teaspoons of that. Notice that I measure like a grandma. This is really to feel, you know. I don't like to go with exact measurements when it comes to this kind of savory cooking. It's really something where you want to get your own feel for it and your own understanding for your own tastes. About 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper pods. I also have some cinnamon. Cinnamon is a very common spice that we use in a lot of savory cooking, as you know, if you are familiar with the region. I'm going to just grind up a little bit of a stick here. It smells amazing. Oh my gosh, I just love it. Once your spices are ground up to your liking, you are ready to move on to season the chickpeas. So half the chickpeas we are going to roast in the oven. I've already preheated the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the perfect temperature to get them crisped up. And honestly, crispy roasted chickpeas, if you haven't made them before, they're such a game changer. They're wonderful to put on so many things. So to this, I'm going to add half of our spice mix, roughly, but it's all gonna come together, so it's not exactly half, don't worry about it. Then we're gonna put about 1 tablespoon of our Sumac into these chickpeas. A pinch of salt, and a few tablespoons of olive oil to roast them in. If you'd like to add a bit more Sumac, you can. We're just going to lay them out on our baking sheet, spreading them out as much as possible so that they can all get crispy. And this goes straight in the oven. It's gonna be in there for about 20 to 25 minutes. We will turn them around about halfway through. Just check on them. You want them to become really beautiful and dark and crispy. These chickpeas are going to be cooked in a pan. So they're already cooked, really. All we want to do is get them a little bit browned in the oil, add the spices, and then we're gonna mush them up so that they have a little bit of a different texture to the ones that we're putting in the oven. So garlic is not always a typical thing that is used in Musakkhan. I am going to put some garlic. I am gonna go light on the garlic. I promise, yes, it's true, I actually am. I think I'm only gonna put 2 cloves in here today. And we're just going to chop these up really finely and cook them in the oil before we add the chickpeas so that it's nice and aromatic and we get that little bit of cooked garlic flavor. This is probably the least amount of garlic I've used in any recipe ever.
It sounded like it.
2 cloves? Yeah. Actually 2 cloves? I'm cooking, and I want it. If you're cooking, you don't want to do it. Low medium heat, a few tablespoons of olive oil. We are going to be using olive oil because we're not going to cook anything on too high a heat today, so it will work for us. And we'll add half of what is left of our spice mix, so roughly. Again, it's all going to come together in the end, so no worries. Garlic, which will start to cook up and fry. Once your garlic becomes just slightly browner, you can add in your chickpeas. You're gonna let these just hang out with these spices a little bit. You're gonna add a small pinch of salt. This could take about 5-10 minutes, not more than that. At this point, when the onions are very, very close, they're feeling really soft, they've got a little ways to go, but I'm going to add in our spices, the rest of our spices that we mixed to the onions. I'm actually happy with how these turned out at this point. I don't think I need to cook them anymore, so I'm gonna turn off the heat and just set these to the side. And you can avoid some of the oil, you don't need all the excess oil. So these are looking great. They're close to done. You can see how they're getting really, really nice and crispy. So let's just turn them around a little bit and back in for just a little bit longer. We have pulled the chickpeas off the stove. The onions are so close to caramelize, they're looking beautiful. I'm going to now mush up this mixture of chickpeas into a chunky situation here. Oh, it smells so nice. Oh, it smells so nice. So this topping that we're making for the Musakkhan and bread, you could use to fill something else. You know, Sumac and roasted chickpeas and mushed chickpeas. You could put it in any kind of sandwich. Hello! So these are beautiful, crispy chickpeas. They are too hot, so I'm not gonna take one in my hand and eat it right now, though I really want to. We're just gonna put this straight into our other chickpea mixture, and that is going to be our protein, our chicken. While I have this out, same piece of parchment paper, you don't need to get a new one or anything. We're going to toast up some pine nuts, which we will garnish this dish with. Oven is still hot. Keep in mind, pine nuts will burn very easily. You can do them dry, you can put them in a toaster, you can toast them in a pan, anything works here. But these are just for garnish, so I'm gonna put a couple of handfuls, a couple and a half, because I have small hands. These will take just a few minutes, nothing more, and they do brown very quickly. So let's just pop those in the oven real quick. So we added some sumac to the roasting chickpeas. We're going to add more sumac into this mixture as well as into our onions. A couple teaspoons of sumac goes in here. Looks something like that. These onions look amazing. They're beautiful, they're brown, they're caramelized, they smell incredible. You can turn off the heat because we don't need to cook them anymore. My last bit of sumac. So I'm gonna do a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. We're just gonna stir this in. We can now transfer these into a bowl and get them ready to top our flatbreads. And now all of our components are here and we are ready to plate the Musakkhan. Typically, Musakkhan is eaten on a flatbread, which I have just warmed in the oven. This is fresh from the Arabic bakery. You can also roll this into shak or pita or into these like tortilla rolls, which is the way that I used to eat it when I was young. Same with Reem. The typical way, we first top our flatbread with some of our beautiful caramelized onions. So the way that my grandma likes to do it, she'll put these on and then sometimes she'll actually bake this in the oven with the onions a little bit. We would either top this with our roasted chicken or, in our case, our beautiful chickpea mixture. Some fresh parsley, always, 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 because it just adds beautiful color and freshness. Your gorgeous chickpea Musakkhan sahtin. I'm so excited to try this. It's really good, you guys. It's really good. Oh my god! I forgot! One last garnish. We have our toasted pine nuts. How could I forget? I took a bite without them. Please excuse me. Toasted pine nuts, hello! We risked burning ourselves for these. Let's get them on. I mean, yeah, that's it. That's that. Yes, yes, yes! This is a great alternative for somebody who doesn't eat chicken but really wants to enjoy the Musakkhan. Also really, really nice with a side of yogurt as well. There are so many beautiful uses for this ingredient. Anytime you're out of citrus, this is a great alternative to use, and it has a really, really unique, tangy quality to it. So I look forward to seeing what you try and make, and let us know if you have any unique or interesting ways that you like to use our dear, dear friend, Sumac. Thank you so much for being here. Sahtin, and I will see you in the next one.